And we are live. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay, let's get Ruby Tuesday started. Let me show this up. All right, everybody, welcome to Ruby Tuesday 84, 3rd of August. So Ruby Tuesday, as always, brought to you by engineers.my. Thank you them for providing us StreamYard and also KR Ruby Brigade. Facebook group where we post all our activities and hang out. Meetup where most of the meetup information is available, including the YouTube link. Hi Xiong. GitHub for all code-related stuff. Slack is where most of us hang out in chat, so join us there as well. And we use Discord whenever we have code clinic. Hey, let's see. All right, so I'm Gui.
I am Tristan.
I'm Gui from Penang.
All right. Okay, first reminder. So, whenever you comment and chat, your profile name, profile picture, comment might show up on stream. If you ask a question, we'll want to highlight the question, so it might show up on stream. Just keep that in mind. Second reminder is to follow the event code of conduct. So we follow the Ruby community conduct guidelines. All right. Is there any hiring shoutouts? I can't think of any on top of my mind so far.
There was one in the Slack group, right? I forgot which one was that. Let me see.
There's one in Slack. So if you join Ruby Slack, you'll see under jobs there's one from Ivan, Penang. So
so it's a mid-level Ruby on Rails developer who can work on a new project building a site from scratch. It's a New York City company paid from the US directly, and several ROR projects, so it's not exactly like a new thing. Like this person seems to be experienced. So if you're interested in a Ruby on Rails job or a gig, then hit up Ivan. Join the Ruby Slack channel. Do we have a link to our Slack channel?
Yes, we do. Hold on.
We had it on one of the slides. Yeah.
Okay, go. You can go to the bit.ly link as well. Let me just share this in the comments.
Mm-hmm. So I guess Gui can attest and confirm the validity of this job posting, right? Like this person and their reputation. Gui Penang? Do you know Ivan? I don't know if he's. Can you hear me?
Oh, getting a comment saying the sound from your side is much lower compared to us, but I think it's all right. Maybe just a bit, I guess.
Well, let me move the microphone closer. Yep, I think that would be it. Yeah. So this seems to be a good gig. So come and apply.
Yep. So again, let me flash out. If you're not on Slack, to join us there, and you can go to the jobs channel. Ivan left out all the details of this gig as well as his contact information. All right. I guess that's also Facebook has a ton of job postings as well. Right. So please do visit our Facebook page as well. Okay, I guess there's only one talk for today, but before we jump into it, is there anything we want to talk about before we go into the talk? No?
I don't, at least not for me.
All right, okay. Yeah, I guess I can share one thing. It's not really related to Ruby Malaysia, but it's more related to Ruby community in Southeast Asia. So this is Ruby Singapore. I joined one of their session once a few months back. And the organizer, Kang Sheng, he's recently thinking about doing a mini series sort of thing. He wanted to kind of find people who build things, at least from a Singapore perspective, find founders and builders in the Ruby community there and try to get them on and speak. So he has a few people that have agreed to speak with him. I think they're still doing this remotely. So I think later he will able to share the details of the call and how to join. I know they used to use Zoom. That's what they used when I joined previously, but they might be moving to Google Meetup. I'm not sure. He has some details there. But if you're interested, check out their Meetup GitHub page. I think it's a good opportunity with this kind of pandemic to join remotely other Ruby communities around the world and see how they're doing.
It's actually a good yeah, like you said, opportunity to try out other communities, especially since everyone's doing it online. The distance is not an issue anymore. You can't say, like, transportation, you can't use transportation as an excuse anymore that I can't attend a meetup because there's no transportation or it's too far away or it's in Putrajaya or something like that. So as long as they're doing it online, everyone is catered to be online. So you should try it. Singapore, there's few in Europe as well, right? Like some of the conferences just finished in Europe as well, so that would be interesting.
Yep, I think Euroko a few months back just posted out all their videos, and there's like Ruby Balkan. I think some of their videos are up. I'm not too sure, but yeah, I really hope, because I'm not familiar with the situation now in Singapore. I'm not sure whether they're still in lockdown or not, or how restrictive their meetups gonna be. But I do hope if they do online, everyone can go and support the series that Kang Sheng is doing. Okay. Okay. Right. Jenny building a Twitter bot with servers. Let me get my slides up. Oops. So I won't be able to see the chat with this open. So if there's any question, just let me know. Okay, so hello everybody. I'm Gui. I'll be sharing my recent journey building a Twitter bot using serverless on AWS. So quick introduction. So I'm Gui. I'm a real software engineer, and in most social media, I'm known as Ghosted Human. So let me talk about what this talk is going to be about, and also what it's not going to be about. So I will break down the Twitter bot that I wanted to build and the frameworks I tried to build this bot with. I won't be talking about which framework is better or tutorials or getting started on these frameworks. I also went through like all the tutorials posted and do tons of Googling as well. So first thing first, disclaimer. So everything I say in this presentation is really my experience. So I don't want to frame any framework as being good or bad. Right? So your mileage may vary. So you might have a drastically different experience than me. So I'm definitely suggesting trying out all the frameworks that I brought up and give them a fair chance. Okay, so let's talk about this Twitter bot I want to build. Basically, every day at a specific time, I want this bot to randomly select an entry from a database, call the Twitter API, and post a tweet. So I left some of more specific requirements out of here on purpose, just for simplicity. So why did I choose serverless, particularly serverless on AWS? Well, for one, it fits my use case. I have a very simple compute and storage requirement. I just want a simple database to store some information, and I just needed the compute to be at a specific time every day. Right? I just needed to call the Twitter API once a day, and let's say a straightforward database. So that's why I decided on AWS Lambda and DynamoDB. Secondly, because it's free, there is a always free tier available for AWS Lambda and DynamoDB. So I'm a cheapskate and I don't want to spend any money on this. So when you're talking about just being free, there are of course tons of other alternatives available. Right? Even Heroku has a free tier and all. But I thought this was a good opportunity for me to dive into this stack as well using Ruby. Okay, so I'm going to translate the previous requirement into more AWS specific services. So I'll store all my contents inside AWS DynamoDB. So the Twitter bot will randomly select an entry from DynamoDB to tweet. I have another function, another AWS Lambda function that kind of pre-populates the DynamoDB. So every time like I set up the stack, the DynamoDB will be empty, right? So I have a function that will kind of populate data inside DynamoDB. I needed a place to store the Twitter API keys, and I really don't want to pass it as an environment variable to Lambda, because if you pass in whatever environment variable you pass to Lambda, it shows up as plain text whenever you look at the function itself. Right. In this case, I use AWS System Manager Parameter Store to store the Twitter API keys. So there is an always free tier available for that as well. Right, so before we dive into framework in details, I kind of want to shed some light on how gems are handled on AWS Lambda. So AWS Lambda is a function as a service, right? And gem packaging usually is bundled separately from the main Lambda function as another Lambda layer. So what are Lambda layers? Lambda layers is a zip archive that can contain additional code or data. So a layer can contain the libraries, all the additional gems you have, custom runtime, data, and configuration files. The reason why I bring Lambda layers up is because I was using a gem to connect to Twitter's API. And we will look at kind of each of the framework, how they handle dependencies, and how they bundle gems into Lambda layers. So the first framework I tried was Ruby on Jets. It's a Ruby dedicated serverless framework. They've tried to follow Rails convention in a lot of aspects. So they have controllers and there's like Jet generate, all that sort of nice magic. So one really nice thing about Ruby on Jet is they already support accessing parameter store. Parameter store is where I store the Twitter API keys. Right? So I didn't have to do any additional heavy lifting in that area. So by default, Ruby on Jets use the Dynamite gem for DynamoDB operations. And one thing I couldn't figure out was scaffolding Ruby on Jets, getting to connect with DynamoDB is I keep getting this very specific resource not found exception. And so I went through like the documentation, how they set up DynamoDB, how they created DynamoDB, how to connect to DynamoDB, went through their repo, find any issues, and including the Dynamite gem itself, I couldn't find anything that could solve my issue. So for kind of like testing purposes, I tried switching to another gem, Dynamoid, and after setting up some configuration, I managed to connect to DynamoDB. So I'm kind of sure this is more of a mistake on my end rather than a gem or framework, but I really couldn't figure out what's wrong. So one day while I was like fooling around and keep trying different things on Ruby on Jets, and then suddenly I get this error, error limit reached, you have reached your daily anonymous download limit. I was like, oh, what's this? So earlier I brought up Lambda layers and how frameworks, serverless frameworks package gems into Lambda layers. Right? So this serverless gems is how Ruby on Jets handle gems and package it into a Lambda layer. I won't go into much detail about this here, but basically there is a limit of how many times I can perform like a download or conversion into Lambda layers with Ruby on Jets. So there is a paid tier where it allows for unlimited download. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm a cheapskate. So after taking this into consideration, that there is a daily limit on how much I can use Ruby on Jets for development, I decided to switch frameworks, specifically to serverless framework itself. So I have to admit I have some bias here. Right? I've used serverless framework in the past and have some familiarity with it. Not much on Ruby though. So serverless framework is a language-independent framework. So they support multiple languages, including JavaScript, Python. Actually, whatever languages that the function as a service provider supports, technically serverless framework will support. Yep. So I want to bring up how serverless framework handles packaging gem into Lambda layers. So Serverless Framework has a plugin that bundles Ruby gems and then deploy them as Lambda layers. So what's really nice about this plugin is you can tell it to package using Docker, and it will use a Docker image to package gems with like native C extensions or system libraries. So you get more options with that. Yeah, that's kind of about it. I prepared these slides like a while back when I was just finishing up the project. So yeah, these are some of the areas you can look at, like Ruby on Jets, what is Lambda layer, what is the Serverless Framework itself, the plugin and all. So yeah, again, this purpose of this talk isn't to highlight a particular framework, whether they are good or bad, but really just me sharing my journey building this. Yep.
How far have you been? Have you gotten to in this your project?
I've kind of completed already. Maybe I can share it on. Hold on. Let me see. I can open it. Yep. Oh, this is gonna expose how much of a weeb I am. But basically, it takes episode title from a Japanese anime called Gintama. And I store the episode titles inside the DynamoDB. And every day at 7 a.m., I think, it will just tweet out an episode title. Yep. So it's like very straightforward kind of thing.
Yeah. I think it's. I guess people use this a similar method for notifications, for example, right? Like alerts, notifications when something happens, then or like a daily in your case a daily update of, like, let's say server metrics, and I guess instead of tweets you can change it to like Telegram messages or something like that, or Slack messages. Like that.
Yeah, like any cron based, time based. Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah, so yeah, anybody definitely encourage you. So AWS specifically supports Ruby 2.7. I don't think they announced support for 3.0 yet. I think maybe they have like a lot of underlying things they need to do to support 3.0, but I'm definitely looking forward for them to support 3.0.
So the Lambda code is written in Ruby. It's not a VM that is, or like an EC2 instance, for example. That's
nope, it's written purely in Ruby. Hold on, maybe I can.
Yeah.
Let me
maybe you can show us like how it looks like. Like, is it just a function definition or a method definition with a specific methods that are available?
Hold on, let me try to open up the code. Okay, so all right. Let's see.
You might need to default a bit larger.
Yep. Hold on, let me. Okay. Okay, one thing good about the serverless framework compared to Ruby on Jets is it has a serverless YAML file, which you can declare all your resources in it. So for example, I declared here, I think this is seeable, right? Let me just zoom in one more. Move it here. So I declare, hey, I have these two functions. One is called tweet, and it runs based on a cron, and I pass in all the Twitter related credentials.
You did mention this in the beginning of your talk, but I think this is good because you never commit any keys into your repository. It's always on your server-side managed infrastructure.
Yep. So for this, you kind of have to go to AWS and create this system manager. Give it, okay, what's the identifier? So this is the identifier I use. and then what's the value of this, right? So it's like a key value pair of sort, but it's secured. And then I have another function, which is like populate table, which I mentioned when I deploy this, the table is empty, so I need a way to like populate all the existing data into it. So here I can define like, hey, have this DynamoDB table. In Ruby on Jets, I don't think they have something similar of a definition thing. So you kind of have like prepare the infrastructure separately from the Ruby on Jets code base. Right, one thing I mentioned earlier was the Lambda layer. So how it converts basically the gems into a separate kind of Lambda layer that the functions can use. So here, just add the serverless Ruby layer, and the Docker part only comes in when it's like bundling stuff to be deployed to Lambda. So if the good thing about a serverless Ruby Lambda layer plugin is that if there's a C extension, it'll try to use the C extension, try to package it together as the Lambda layer. I don't think Ruby on Jets does that. They have their own mechanism, which I don't remember on top of my head. But yeah, they have that information available. So for the most of the code base, so I defined two functions. So one is like populate table. Basically, I have a list of all the data here, right? So it's like when I run this, just populate all this into DynamoDB. And the second part is pretty much straightforward. So I pass in the, let me open up this file again. So as you see here, I pass all these SSM values as an environment variable. So it's secured. And from here, I just use the Twitter gem and then configure the Twitter client. And then there's a bit of complicated logic here because I wanted to make sure a episode title is not tweeted twice. So what it does is it will kind of scan the entire table, take whatever that's not being tweeted, and then just tweet it and then update the value. If the entire table there's like everything has been tweeted before, then it will just update all the values to be like untweeted and start the cycle again. Just to make sure that there's no like some episode titles that are being too heavily weighted. But yeah, but that's about it really.
Sounds good.
So previously, there's a fast Ruby. I think it's getting acquired by some company already.
I think Shopify bought them already. We did have the Fast Ruby founder join us for talk once, right? I think.
Yep.
Yeah, I think Fast Ruby, and then they also had like crystal bindings, both faster, the Ruby one and.
So on his page, fastruby.io, he recommends open fast, open FAS, open function as a service. In that framework itself, it supports multiple language, including Ruby. So I think it's quite interesting to do that. And I also saw that they support Java for serverless. So in compiled language, that's like very interesting, where you can use Java as a function as a service. So I can paste the link.
I think one thing people tend to talk about when it comes to like languages is the warm-up time, because essentially function as a service, most like public cloud providers, for example, like AWS, they will spin up like a dedicated EC2 on the background and then run the function on it, right? So there's a lot of written documentation on how, if you use like JVM-based language like Java, there is a known boot up lag because they need to, the JVM itself needs to boot up, right? I know some companies have done some work for Ruby, but I'm not sure anything of those has been written or not.
Yeah, and the thing about Java, the reason why they talk about startup time is because it is given that Java programs will have startup time because that's the way they're designed. Java programs are designed to be long-lived. And so the startup time doesn't really matter since you're going to JIT yourself anyway. Like it's going to be just in time compiled anyway, and the longer the program runs, the more efficient it becomes. So which is the opposite of how a serverless function behaves. It should start up quickly and then die quickly, and yeah, that's why there are different ways you can. It really depends on the cloud provider. The cloud provider can say, "Oh, we support Java," and then it will just run a Java program distribution, for example, or platform at the back end, and it just runs the Java programs in the background without destroying the Java virtual machine. And so you still like take advantage of particular jitting of functions, but it really depends on the cloud provider.
Yep.
Cool stuff.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to? I mean, that's all for my talk. But is there anything else you want to talk about before we end this session?
I think Gui Penang wanted to show something on you mentioned on Slack.
The link for the competition, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me share that link to
You can
the.
share it on screen. You can get the link.
Let me copy this. My mouse is not copying. Okay. Yep. Share to the chat. So this is just released, I think, today. As a Ruby Award competition by Mars and the government of Fukuoka designed an interesting Ruby program, and the grand prize is 1 million yen.
Mm.
Yeah. I think it's interesting for whoever is practicing or using Ruby. Try it.
Deadline is December 3rd. Program
What's the like? This is not a golfing or something, right? It's like what's the criteria?
I think the from what I see, the panel is from past grand prize Ruby mobile.
Eligibility.
Yeah, it doesn't have much information.
Whole projects.
Zoom in more.
So there you go. So projects that help increase the popularity or growth of Ruby, impact society in a big way, are widely used.
Conditions. Oh, so you can exclusive development Ruby is not required. So you can mix and match.
Mhm.
Free access entries.
But it has to have been developed or completed within the past 1 year.
Yep, 1 year. I guess help increase growth. Basically, the three criteria you mentioned earlier. That's the main thing. Pretty much anything goes.
Mhm.
Offered to our companies. Student awards
Oh,
only
but
limited to students in Japan.
mhm.
So, Jason, using
No. I'm not. I'm just reading through whatever you're scrolling through.
December. So no entry fee.
So does it have to be? So it has to have been developed within the year, but could have it been started the previous years before? Like it's an ongoing thing.
Let's
I wonder.
see. There's no. Let's see here if they
Within the past 1 year,
infringement. No
the
entry.
entries must be developed or completed within the past 1 year. So
I think it's. But it says completed. I guess you could start like years before, but I guess
Yeah, but
what's the definition
completed
of
is a very
completion, right?
strange. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a very strange thing. Especially in today's software, you never really complete anything. You always make
Yeah.
updates. Can you take a look at the previous awardees? I think it's at the bottom. And I can have an idea of what these things are like, what they actually require.
Does it show the previous awardees? or
Yeah,
investor?
award winners, it says, right? Fukuoka Ruby Award winners in red.
This is the application form, no? Because I saw this application form 2020, I assume this link's there. Oh, this is Japanese. Hold on.
Can you auto translate the thing? No, I guess not. It's 2021 713. Yes. No.
Oh, there's some
Yeah.
English ones here. So yeah,
Mhm.
transpiler for Ruby, puppeteer Ruby. I'm not sure what is this. This seems to be like something related to satellite. Okay, so I'm very limited. Something to do with WebSocket,
Mhm.
Puppeteer Ruby. I think these are like company specific awards, maybe. Like this is AWS award somehow. I'm not too sure. There's like special awards as well. So Ficted, Reflect, Mutant Script. There's like AI related stuff as well.
Mhm.
For unconventional finance, I guess maybe Bitcoin related. Yep. So I guess most likely like a gem, I guess would very much fit.
Mhm. Sounds good. Looks good.
Yeah. So if anybody's interested, go for it. Entry is free. And the closing date is
Sorry. See, now there's a. Can you scroll down a bit?
okay.
It says should must have been developer updated in the past year or so. So I guess they're just saying, please don't submit any old projects from like previous years.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be completed. It must have been at least like worked on.
Yep. Or at least I guess enough to kind of showcase what you want to, what is the concept or whatever you're trying to showcase, right?
Yeah.
That will probably be the definition of complete.
Mhm.
But yeah, this is interesting.
Looks
Okay.
good.
Thanks for sharing, Gui. All right, I guess that's it for today's meetup.
Yeah. It's a short
So
one today.
yep. As always, we are always looking for speakers. So if anybody wants to speak, come on, you can talk about anything, including your journey into like building a Twitter bot. So feel free to come along. Like don't worry, don't be too worried about like whether the topic is interesting or anything. Just come and share, and we'll just have a chill time, I guess.
And you mentioned about the workshop next month.
Yeah, I was thinking about doing a code clinic for October, which is 2 months away. So next month we'll probably have something similar like this. But the month after, we're hoping like if anyone has any questions about their code or maybe want some third party kind of opinions on whatever they're building or anything, maybe you feel like learning a new meta programming maybe, or trying out some new gem, we can just all hang out together and see how a gem works, or try to fix some bugs or see how to refactor some code or do some exercises. Yeah, pretty open, but essentially it will be very much code based rather than like having a speaker and a presentation.
Got it.
Okay, I guess that's it. Thanks everybody.
All right. Bye. See you next month.
See you next month.